The Congressional Budget Office reported this week that the U.S. government's debt is unsustainable, that the hundreds of billions in recent stimulus spending have contributed significantly to that debt, and that unless corrective measures are taken soon, including drastic cuts in government spending, the result could be a deeper financial crisis and an unraveling of the American nation from within. Back to our freedom fighters. Charlie, before we get to this subject, during the break, you actually said that part of what Lew Rockwell said about the Fed you agree with.
Well, clearly the Fed has bailed out the big banks over the last 30 years so many times that it created what's known as moral hazard. The banks themselves believe the Fed is going to protect them, so they take increasing levels of risk.
Right.
And that's what led to what happened in 2008. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay.
We do need, listen, Paul Volcker did a pretty good job.
I understand your argument.
Let's get the fox out of the hen house.
Let's get to the
congressional.
congressional budget report. Congressional Budget Office, supposedly neutral, Fed information by the government says we're getting like grease because we're spending too much money. Does the administration, does anybody in government have the will to stop spending?
Well, Judge, we won't be like Greece, right? Because we have the Fed. That is the big distinction between Greece and the United States.
Well, what do you mean because we have the Fed? Because they can just print our way out of debt.
Because we can coin money that has, international value, and Greece can't do that.
Hang on. So Carolyn says, Lew Rockwell, we won't get like Greece because we have the Fed. We'll just push this debt onto a future generation as yet unborn, right?
Well, the Fed does make sure that the government itself can't go bankrupt because it's got that big counterfeiting press. But of course, but this debt is capable of crushing the American people, crushing our prosperity, and ruining us as a country.
How can we address
$14
trillion in debt?
Here's the problem with what she said. I mean, the debt is conducted through fiscal policy rather than monetary policy. And, the Fed has now been complicit with the Obama administration. If you think about what happened over the last 2 years, we had two things. We had massive amounts of spending from Obama, stimulus, you name it.
From the Bush administration as well.
Taking over, but he's heaped on some more. And we had incredibly easy money from the Fed. That is a very dangerous combination. And I think that's the problem with the Fed right now, is that it is now complicit with this administration in terms of its insane spending policy.
Doesn't the Fed actually conduct its own foreign policy? Doesn't the Fed lend dollars to foreign countries that we might even be adverse to?
Well, the Fed, we know, has actually bailed out foreign banks, too. They haven't done only bail out American banks. It really is an agency that's a rogue agency. It has no business in a free society. It's doing damage to us. It's doing damage to other countries.
Disclosure? How about
we
more,
face the
congressional
possibility of hyperinflation.
All right.
We can all agree on that.
Thank you. You just read my
mind.
mind. How about Congressman Ron Paul's bill, which Barney Frank went along with initially and then caved in on, to audit the Fed? If you like the idea of the Fed backing up the federal government and bailing out everybody under the sun, shouldn't we know what money it's printing, what money it's creating, and who it's bailing out?
Absolutely. And we also, getting back to this idea of getting the fox out of the hen house, we need the Fed to be an actual organization of regulation and accountability rather than one that's in the pocket of banks.
If you think about agree about auditing the Fed.
Absolutely. If you think about the AIG bailout, this is really interesting because the AIG bailout was essentially a backdoor bailout of the U.S. banks, of Goldman Sachs, which held those insurance policies on their debt issued by AIG, and the foreign banks. Yet we have not really fully understood this, come to terms with this, until like now, 2 years later, reports are leaking out. Emails have been subpoenaed by congressional committee, and they're coming to light. And that's the problem with the Fed, that it is way too secret. But that doesn't mean you abolish it.
All right. So we have our freedom fighters agreeing, Lou, at least that we should audit it. Question: will it ever be audited, or will the big government interests prevent that? Will it ever be put out of business, or are we so wedded to it that the big government interests are terrified of not having a Fed?
I think for the first time in its entire history, the Fed has become controversial. The Fed is scared. I've had people on Wall Street who know high officials of the Fed. The Fed is outraged and scared that they are the subject for the first time of popular scrutiny, thanks to Ron Paul, thanks to you, Judge, and thanks to others in the society. So I think we're moving forward and looking at the Fed, having a magnifying glass over their crimes. So I think there are good things happening.
I just think anybody that says abolish the Fed is out of their mind.
Abolish the Fed.
No, it's crazy.
Abolish the Fed.
It'll be Armageddon. You will lead to Armageddon.
We will have competition in currency.
They're bringing us
on
Armageddon.
the red button. I'll tell you and him together. You're both going to press the button.
We'll have competition in currencies, and you'll be richer and freer.
That is the most insane idea I've heard all day.
Gasparino, you're great. Heldman, you're terrific. Rockwell, thanks for joining us.
Read Ron Paul's book, End the Fed.